LAPD patrol officers stopped a man for a traffic violation. The driver pulled into the parking lot of a strip mall on Western near Florence. And as officers were talking to that driver, they say a suspect came around a corner and opened fire in their direction. Officers immediately shot back. Eventually, that suspect died. And it turns out the suspect, police say, was using a ghost gun. What police don't know is who or what the suspect was shooting at. Was it the officers or was it at a business right next to them? That business, say police, turned out to be an illegal cannabis dispensary that was open at the time.
Buenos dias, Gunners Collective. Back at it? You already know. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. Here goes another one. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. I said, what? Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Got love for the homie, though. Bye-ya. Bye-ya. Now, we're going to get straight to this, man. On June 28th, 2023, we lost a real one. We lost a California legend. We lost a real soldier, man. Rest in peace to Tiny Solo from A-Tray Gangsta Crips. Now, what makes this video right here so personal to me is this was the first Crip that I actually ever met that was a real one. That I said, okay, that's real Crippin' right there. He was the tiniest and smallest guy I ever seen in my life. When I got incarcerated and I was sent to CYA to Fred C. Nellis, he was the first Crip I ever ran into. He was the first A-Tray gangster that I ever ran into. And I've told the story before. And the trippy part about it is, I just found out recently that he passed a couple months ago. And it hurt the heart, even after all this time, because I had a lot of interaction, man. He was a good dude. He was solidified. He was certified in the streets. See, when you're certified, you don't have to get verified. You're really about that business, everyone will recognize. Size doesn't matter, and he was a perfect example. To most, he was known as Tiny Solo from A-Tray Gangsta Crips. To those that were around him, that were close to him, that were cool with him, like myself and several others, he was known as Little Michael Meadows, Little Mikey. He passed tragically on June 28th due to a police shooting. According to the word on the curb, that he was out there wiggling, doing his thing. And on June 28th at about 12:48 at night or in the morning, I guess the cops had pulled somebody over and he was walking. And, according to what the cops are saying, but you can never believe that bullshit. They're saying that he opened fire on them. So, of course, they retaliated back. He was hit several times. Now, that's a mysterious thing for someone just to open up fire on the police officers when they weren't provoked. A lot of people believe that he was opening fire on an enemy or somebody else and didn't even know the cops were in the area and kind of just got caught up by circumstance. Whatever the case may be, he's no longer with us, man. And it's a big rest in peace to Michael Meadows. But let me tell you a little bit about Tiny Solo from A-Tray and how real he was. The smallest guy ever that I seen in the California Youth Authority. Now, I was young. In fact, I was 1 year younger than him, but never knew. Always thought that he was the youngest one because of his size. But the man carried himself with class, professionalism, and integrity and really put it down for his body or his hood. A-Tray Gangsta Crips, is a big, big hood in South Central LA. And I remember the first time I met Lil Michael Meadows, Tiny Solo, I had got to a compa in Fred C. Nellis called Cleveland. I had just come from the reception. I already had a chip on my shoulder. I already had the mentality I don't give a fuck because I knew the only way for me to get back up north, I was in Southern California on Whittier Boulevard, and I knew the only way for me to get back up north, being a norteño at the time, was to catch a body, was to really put it down and be recognized as someone who was terrorizing shit. And that was the only way for me to get back up north. And I was willing to do that. Even as a young kid, the way as I was thinking and my mentality was all fucked up. Anyways, I remember coming to the compa and they sat us all down in the day room. There was about 10 of us. And I was already waiting to see what the program was going to be like. And I was already on swivel, meaning my head was on swervelation, right? I was looking around to make sure that nobody would approach us. So as I'm sitting down in that day room, Tiny Solo's pushing a mop. And he's a little guy. When I say little, I mean the littlest black guy I'd ever seen in my life. Little light-skinned cat. And he walks up to me. Maybe because I was a little guy too, right? And he goes, hey, cut. No, he goes, hey, homie, what's up, Bessie? And he held up his arm, and I distinctly remember him holding up his arm, and he had a big 3. Now, this was a common tattoo we used to get in YA back in the days. Everybody would get like a big 1-4 behind their arms, a big 1-3, or whatever the case may be. And he holds up this big 3, and he shows me his arm, and he has Florence written on his arm. Now, I don't know if that was in reference to the city or the town, street he grew up, or his mother, you know, having a name Florence. Either way, this is what he showed me, and automatically I computed that with Florencia, and I thought he was from Florencia. Like, what? Look at this little black guy from Florence. So I jumped up, this norte, this and that, you know, representing where I'm from, thinking that we're going to get off where we're mad at. And he starts laughing. He said, nah, I'm from A-Tray, cuz this is A-Tray Gangster, and he shows me the 8 on the other side. And that moment right there, by me having heart and showing him that I was down to get off, and by him doing that, we became close friends. Now, I remember he had a lot of juice on that compa. Because he was so small, the counselors, the GSs, the YCs, which were the youth counselors and the ones that dressed in uniforms, they liked him. They liked Michael Meadows because he didn't give a shit. He wasn't the type to turn down a fade. He wasn't turning down nothing. You know, he was really turned up. He was really willing and able to take any type of fade and get off on any enemy that wanted that. And I always tripped out on it because I was like, wow, that right there kills the cliche of, you know, the small guy ain't got nothing coming. You know, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. And he represented that. You know, I've seen him fight several times. Although he didn't win every single fight, he was in every single fight. Now, one of the best fights that I'll ever remember seeing Tiny Solo from A-Tray in was when Tiny Madman from 60s, you know, which is a notorious enemy of A-Tray's, you know, because they beef with all the O's, or they did at that time, gets to the compa. Now, Tiny Madman was known as well to have hands and didn't play them games. Tiny Madman was about the business. And, of course, Tiny Madman versus Tiny Solo, that was on everyone's tip of their tongue. Everybody was wondering if it was going to happen, and it definitely did behind the handball court. And I'm here to tell you, man, that was probably one of the best fights I ever seen. The two little guys going at it. And to be totally honest with you, man, I think Tiny Solo got that one. That's just facts. Now, overdoing time with him and seeing the way he wiggled, he was the type of guy that was always joking, funny, but had an edge to him. Meaning there was always a little something different with Tiny Solo. You could play with them. You could be cool with him if he was cool with you. But if you weren't, he was quick to get off. He was quick to handle business. I guess that was just the mentality of being raised in South Central LA and coming from the gang he's coming from. Now, a little back history on where he was from. You know, the West Side Crips is the first Crip gang ever founded by Tookie Williams and a couple other OGs. And A-Tray Gangsters was a spin-off or a break-off from the West Side original Crip gang. You know, Sidewinder, who was an original OG Crip, decided to break off for no other reason than that was his area and start A-Tray Gangsters, ETGC. Now, the A-Trays always stood on their own and stood firm and strong, man. And that area of South Central LA, you know, is very well known. So the West Side A-Tray Gangster Crips, you know, started to put it down and gain a reputation. There were several instances that they were caught up in. And growing up in that area, what do you expect? You know, you're probably going to see that everywhere you go, and you're probably going to be from there. And that's exactly what Tiny Solo did. Anyone that knew him, anyone that had the privilege of being around that guy, knew he was a carefree individual and a very nice dude. But at that same time, like I said, had that edge. Okay, so here's one more little story I remember about Tiny Solo, man. I still can't wrap my head around the fact that he's gone. And that everybody from that era, man, from that real era, and I'm talking about real Crippin', not Crip Mac, not Blueface, not none of this watered down, correct bullshit that they're doing. I'm talking about real Crippin', respects, admonishment of the real ones. You know, people like Tiny Evil from A-Tray, Tiny Solo from A-Tray, you know, Snoop from A-Tray Hoover, you know, Snap from Legend Crip, Spider from Backstreet Watts. You know, Shadow from Grape. You know, Turtle from East Coast. These are the type of individuals that were really crippin', that were really doing it, that I was incarcerated with, that I could say for sure and for facts, man. We're no suckers, not even close. And Tiny Solo's on top of the class, man. He's right there. And I've spoken on him in the past. It's a trip because if you look close at the thumbnail, that 3 that I was talking about in the you know, when I said I first met him, you could actually see it. It's old school, man. Got the old school The old Asian letters we used to call them, right? Everyone used to get trust no man behind there. It's just facts, right? This is old gangster 90s shit. Anyway, so another little story about Tiny Solo is we had to go to the school area. And one thing about the school area was, it was always going down. This is the one place where everybody got off. No matter what, didn't matter who you were. If you didn't fight at least one time in that school area, you was a poop butt. You was telling on everybody. On Paru, whack 100. You only fought once. Lucky. You got lucky. We'll let you scrape by. But, if you weren't getting off right there or someone getting off on you with your enemies, it was different. And that's one thing about being locked up in the LA area was it's always about enemies. In Northern California, it was different. It was plain and simple North and South. That's it. Bulldogs got involved when they fell off. When they decided to do their own thing, then it was Bulldogs against North or Bulldogs against South or whatever the case may be. An occasional black or white if you had a personal issue. But down South, it was all about different hoods, different cliques, different spots. Constant fucking enemy. That's what it was. Well, anyways, I remember I was walking with Tiny Solo. We just happened to be walking. It was me, Tiny Solo, Spider from Backstreet, my homeboy Chucky from Sawhole, a couple other people, right? And we're just walking around this bend. And there was a dude there from 40s. He had just got there. Pretty big dude, right? And he was looking back and he disrespected A-Trace. He disrespected Tiny Solo. Man, let me tell you something, cuz. On correct to my keyways, right? This Vato got off so fast, took off running, right? And did the springboard over the top of the homeboy's back, right? Damn near did a somersault and just got off where he was mad at. It was funny because he was so little and seeing him do these things. But you couldn't take it as funny, man. This guy was really with the activities, really with the program. Anyways, they were fighting, and I ain't gonna lie, man. He started choking little Michael out, and Tiny Solo was like, "Hey, Drake," right? He was just a little guy. But that's the type of heart that man had. As he grew up, that was my interaction with him. Of course, I moved on in life. I got transferred to Preston, from Preston to Carl Holton, and I paroled. But I never forgot about Tiny Solo. And I don't know where his life took a twist. And, obviously he was still in the hood. Obviously he was still with the program, and he's loved by many. A lot of real ones from that era in the 90s are gone. I myself am going through my battles. I'm sick. I don't know if you could tell by my voice or just tell by the way I look in some videos, but I'm battling what I'm battling, right? But I'll tell you right now, it's an era of losing real ones from that era and something we can never get back. Like I said, I met that guy in Fred C. Nellis, CYA. And from everything I heard, man, he stood solid all the way to the end. And you can't say nothing about someone like that. Someone who's well respected in the hood, someone who puts it down. He definitely, and for facts and for sure, man, was as real as they got. I remember the counselors, they loved him or they hated him. And he was the type, man, I remember this counselor, she disrespected him some type of way. She told him he had to go down to the dorm and he was supposed to be mopping. He liked to be in the dare. He liked to be in the mix. Little nosy motherfucker, right? He liked to see what was going on. And he would always be pumping up. He was a pump up case too. He liked to pump people up to fight and shit. And so I remember one time he's right there in the day room. She told him he had to go down to the dorm. She knew what time it was with Tiny Solo. And I remember he slapped the fuck out of her. You know what I mean? He ended up slapping her. He went to the box for about 2 weeks, came back smelling like dog shit, right? Hair all fucked up, man. Talking about this still A-Trade, cuz. Man, rest in peace to a real one. Like I said, these stories are priceless. They're gold. They're diamond. They're facts. And my heart goes out to his family. Condolences to his family, his neighborhood. It's forever A-Trade gangster love, man. I got nothing but love for the Crips right there from A-Trays. Did a lot of time with them. And like I said, that was the first real Crip I ever met. First real hood I ever heard of. And I got nothing but respect, They rocked with integrity. They backed our play in certain circumstances when we really needed them. Being Norteños down south, guided us and showed us the way. And for that, I'm forever indebted to A-Trey, man. And it's nothing but love. With that being said, rest in peace to Tiny Solo. And you forever will be remembered, brother. That's a fact, man. Talking about where you from, SA. I'll never forget. With that being said, I hope that you move smooth with a purpose, get everything that you want coming to you. Remember, at the end of the day, man, you could be gone that quick. Man, show love. You already know what it is. Thumbs up or thumbs down. Heavy's going to be the head that wears the crown. I'm going to continue to strive and struggle. The gun. Bang, bang.